Hello, I'm Richard Arfsten. I'm the sculptor who has made all these little maquettes. A maquette is a design that can be used or is used to make a piece of sculpture big. In other words, if you wanted to buy a big piece of sculpture, you wouldn't just say, make me a big piece of sculpture. Make me a couple of maquettes so I can see what the designs look like in the round. So usually a sculptor will make a maquette out of a piece of clay, and then once the purchaser likes the design, he'll say, okay, build me a small version, or build me the full-size one if he's got a lot of money. He takes a flyer at it. Usually a clay maquette in the old days for pieces of stone sculpture or whatever would be about a foot tall maybe, and they're just clay sketches. But after the purchaser decides he likes the idea, then what the sculptor will do is he makes a small piece, maybe 2 or 3 feet tall, out of plaster. It's hard, and clay is not durable. But anyways, he makes an accurate one about 2 or 3 feet tall, and that piece goes then to the stone cutter. And the stone cutter uses some dividers to, they're scaled. They're like an X. And he measures on the little one with one side of the X, and then he takes the other side and puts it to the piece of stone that he's carving, so that he can not make mistakes on the stone. Because if you make a mistake on a stone, once you got the nose cut off, you're in big trouble, In this case, I work with steel. And the whole idea of working with flat steel is to save a ton of money on the foundry costs if you're going to cast it. To make a casting costs probably 10 or 20 times more than to make one like this out of sheet metal. Think of each one of these little elements, the little parts there. Those are all little boxes, and the way you would construct this is you make the boxes and then you weld them together. Well, let's assume now that we wanted to make a really, really big piece, and it'd be hard to ship, okay? So one way you would do it is you would have your fabricator make the individual pieces, and then you would ship them to the site and then assemble them like Lincoln logs or Legos on the site to build a sculpture. If you're working smaller so that it could be trucked, then you could weld those boxes together and then truck them. Well, another way to work is to make the maquette very accurately, which is what these are, and then send it to the purchaser to check over. In my case, it might be anywhere around the world. I make these big enough that I could put them in a box and mail them. So let's assume now that you got somebody in Abu Dhabi wants to buy one of these things. So then I mail it over there, and he has paid for the maquette. It's a small fee compared to the big cost of building it. But then, because I have designed all these things to be made out of flat stock, sheet metal, sheets of steel or bronze or brass or whatever it is that you want to build with, stainless steel. It doesn't make any difference. Anyway, they go to a metal fabricator and he cuts those pieces out and rolls them and makes the boxes, and then he assembles the boxes. But now it doesn't have to be put in a container or on a ship or on a train or a barge or a truck. You can make it really, really big. And that's the advantage of, like Calder used to make really, really big things. And they would all bolt together. So these, in order to do that, they would have to have ways of one hooking on to another, okay, which I'm not going to design. Anyways, in my situation here, they buy the maquette, and they have somebody with a scanning device. They got every major city's got a bunch of them now. It's the way you manufacture things. And they read this with a scanner. It's got a table on it that turns just the way this is here. And it's got a laser eye that reads the form, makes a computer pattern out of it, and then the computer actually designs the pattern. In the old days, when I was younger, I would have to lay these things out and do it on a drafting table. It was very, very complicated. In fact, as a matter of fact, the old guys used to do it with sheet metal for all these finials for the top of buildings and stuff like that. I had a hell of a time trying to find somebody that could lay these patterns out for the few that I have enlarged myself. Anyways, that's how it's done now with the computer. And so there, now, let's say in Abu Dhabi, okay, they can build this thing and take it to the site and assemble it, or even weld the boxes together. The boxes would have to be welded individually at the factory, wherever it is that they made it. But then they could transport these pieces individually and assemble them if that's what they want to do, depending on the scale that you could build these. You know, you can build these things 20 feet tall. It's just you can't move them around that big. So, anyways, I am more or less a box maker. All these things are as boxes. Every one of these things has got 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 sides to it, depending on the form, you know. So people ask me to describe my pieces, and I tell them, think of French fries. You know, they're like odd-shaped French fries that are stuck together. So anyways, that's what these are. They're maquettes. And the reason why I'm turning these things, instead of just giving you one shot, you know, there's usually one view, like this view right here. That's the killer view for this piece. Most of the time there's only 1 or 2, or maybe there's 3 killer views, you know. But so the idea for turning it is so that you can have your metal fabricator look at these to get some idea of the complexity to build these. Because you don't have to be a sculptor to cut the pieces out and put it together. There's no designing here. It's just pure fabrication. You know, it's like somebody gives you the blueprints to make a car. You know, you don't have to design each car individually. It's, you know, somebody is stamping out the fenders, somebody's doing this, somebody's doing that. You know, and so that's the whole idea. The other thing is, once I get one of these things made, where do I store it? You know, so it's a whole lot easier to store something that's 12 inches by 12 inches by 6 inches than it is to, you know, have all these big pieces all over the place. So for anybody that makes big sculpture, that's a big problem. What do you do with it after you make it? And the other thing is, it takes up all of your available bank account or money to build one of these suckers, you know, so you don't want to invest that much into manufacturing it if you don't have to. Anyways, in order for me to solve the problem, I took a job in a bronze casting foundry, because at the time I was making figurative stuff, and it costs a fortune to make a piece of sculpture. So much so that these guys that do figurative art on speculation, like cowboy art, stuff like that, they make a maquette. In that case it would be clay, and they take the clay to a art show. There's one in Loveland that I go to, and then you show that, and potential buyers will put a down payment on a piece. Now he's got to get 25 buyers to put down payments on before they can start building the sculpture, because it costs so much money to make the mold. In the case of a figurative piece, you're working with a process called lost wax casting, and you got to make a mold. It's a very, very involved, I don't want to go into it, process. This here process that I'm using is called evaporative pattern casting. And what I'm doing is I'm working with a piece of foam that I cut up on a bandsaw, and then I assemble it with a wax glue like in a hot glue gun, same kind of thing. So now I got the styrofoam all put together, and then I put a coating on it, and then I develop a gating system. That's where the metal gets poured into it, and then it gets buried in dry loose sand and vibrated, and then I pour hot metal into it. Well, it all sounds simple, but there's 50 reasons why it won't work. One of these days I'm going to put together a video to show a whole bunch of pieces that didn't work that actually came out pretty nice. The problem with this process is that no artist in his right mind would ever work this way other than me, because so many of the times you lose the idea or the piece that you're casting. So let's say that we were going to use this in for a part on an automobile. They use this to make manifolds, really hard to cast. The problem is they will make 100 castings and record everything. It's all done with a computer, making a pour and all this to control all these variables until they get it figured out one. Then they go into mass production and they make 100,000 of these things. In my case, I have one pattern and I got one try, and so much of the time they don't come out. So it's a really, really hard way to work, but it's the only thing I can afford. So there's no art foundry that would ever cast these for me. anyways, that's the story. Thanks a lot. Have a good day. Appreciate you watching. And I will be making more of these. I have been doing this for 40 years, and I got a lot of these, and I want to show them. Thanks. If you are interested in what these things cost and little backstories behind each of them, there's a couple sites up above that talk about this. Saatchi has the backstories and the prices, but it's a hard site to navigate. The other one, Arfsten, up there, has a few words about each piece, not much, but it's a real easy site to navigate around, and it's organized. So if you have a desire to see more of my work, you can get a fast overview on Arfsten. Anyways, I appreciate you watching. Thanks for your time, and have a good day and a better tomorrow. This is Richard Arfsten signing out.